let's start with Jeremiah Smith, one of the most polarizing players already in college football, playing for arguably the biggest brand in college football, coming off of a national championship, one of the best seasons we've ever seen for a freshman, nonetheless a receiver, just a freshman overall. And the reports out there is that he's getting paid over $3 million to stay in Columbus. Now, if you look at the rest of the market, there's a report out there that Carson Beck, the former Georgia quarterback, is getting paid north of $4 million from Miami. Eric Singleton, one of the top players in the transfer portal, getting $1 million from Auburn. So, Drew, I guess I'll just ask you a simple question here. Is Ohio State getting a discount, or are they overpaying?
I think this is a team-friendly deal, Cooper. Right before the national championship, I shot you a text message. I think it was the day prior, and I said, hey, Jeremiah Smith enters the transfer portal. I think he's going to get quarterback type of money. So what is QB money? You said $4 million for Carson Beck. Like, that's where I think the number would start for a player like Jeremiah Smith. And I had heard kind of through some back channels that there were some schools that were going to make a run at him. And obviously it's not free agency. And yeah, you can throw out that term tampering and whatnot, but I'm not surprised that he is commanding this type of value. And I think he's worth every single penny. Cooper, think about this. Like, he is one of the most marketable players in all of college football over the next 2 seasons. Yeah, you at home might be watching or you're listening over the airwaves. Yeah, you know all the faces on your favorite college football team. But how many other guys could you identify around the country? I think Jeremiah Smith in 13 games, 14 games, quickly became a superstar. So if you think about what is his value to a program, I also think there's jersey sales, there's ticket sales. Everyone is tuning into Ohio State now because they want to see Jeremiah Smith. Yes, they just won a national championship, but he is a superstar. So, if $3 million is the figure, I think Ohio State's kind of getting him again, team-friendly deal.
I think it's a steal as well. And that Carson Beck number kind of comes to mind at $4 million. I would say teams out there would be willing to pay north of that, $4.5, $5 million. You and I were texting. I thought he could go as high as 6, but Jeremiah Smith going to stay in Columbus. And Drew, the other part of this that might have something to do with this, I mean, you're talking about a guy that has half dozen substantial endorsements as well. That includes Red Bull, Nintendo, Epic Games. I mean, you go down the list. Jeremiah Smith is going to be the face of college football over the last 2 years. Can I ask you a question? I was sitting with my wife watching the national championship game, and she was asking me about Jeremiah Smith, in which I think it paints a very relatable picture that somebody that is just a average watcher of the game wants to know who that is, wants to have a deeper knowledge of that player because he's so exciting. I thought to myself, I don't know how many times we're going to get to witness this caliber of player. I think we're in the midst of watching one of the greatest players of all time at his position, and to realize that in the moment and watch it play out over the next couple of years, Drew. I mean, it could be something really, really special that, quite honestly, maybe you only get to see once or twice in your lifetime.
I feel like we've been talking about Jeremiah Smith on the 105 for forever now, right? And 2 things have come to mind after this kind of season that we've seen. I would agree with you, Cooper. I think he's the best prospect of our time. And, if you want to wrap your head around that, Travis Hunter came out a few years ago, and he just put together a season of college football that will never be repeated again in terms of what he did on both sides of the ball. I just think Jeremiah Smith is that good. The other thing that stands out to me, Cooper, is when we named him the #1 prospect in the country 2 Octobers ago, we made that big move, put a wide receiver at #1. I remember I was asking him for a player comp. All right, hey, who do you think you are? Who does your game remind yourself of? Who do you like to study? And he just said, hey, I'm Jeremiah Smith. I think after this freshman season, he is right. He is Jeremiah Smith. He is in his own bucket, and I can't wait to watch him not only next season, but eventually on Sundays.
Well, very much agree with that. I think that the confidence part, the quiet confidence. I mean, you heard the quotes during the playoffs before Oregon, before the national championship game, the level of, I would say, just confidence in the preparation and his talent alone. But nobody really scoffed at that. I think everybody said, okay, I mean, he's proved it all season. He proved it in the playoffs as well. Now has proved himself as arguably the best player in all of college football just 1 year into the game, Drew. But it also brings up a really good question, and back to the financial figures as well. Outside of the quarterback position, you look ahead to next year, 2025 already, and I kind of want to lob the question to you. Outside of Jeremiah Smith, outside the signal callers, who's the first guy that you would pay that $3 to $4 million and say, you know what, I'm going to go invest in this guy to start my team?
Oh, Cooper, I know you put the list everyone sees on the screen right here. Two names for me. I think Dylan Stewart and Colin Simmons, just guys that can get after the quarterback. We're going to get into the NFL draft here in a little bit, but Abdul Carter from Penn State, you can make a case that maybe he was the top defensive player on the field in all of college football this past season. To me, I think those pass rushers, and I think the other thing is, hey, that you're going to get maybe 2 years out of them. So I'm trying to sign them to a multi-year deal. Both those guys coming off awesome freshman campaigns. And the other name that sticks out there, Caleb Downs, the safety for Ohio State. Cooper, I thought of the national title game, we saw two of the top safeties in all of college football. I also think you could put KJ Bolden from Georgia in there. But what Xavier Watts was able to do at Notre Dame, what Caleb Downs was able to do at Ohio State, it unlocks so many different things for your defense. So, we don't think of safety as this premium position, but man, getting guys like that see it a certain way and can be in the right place at the right time, it's very, very hard. And I think in the college game, man, if you can get those guys, they're difference makers. So those are the 3, 4, if we want to put KJ Bolden into that group as well.
Well, I think you and I kind of talked about it. The value of safeties, high-end safeties in college football, a little less in the NFL. They're extremely hard to come by. We've talked about this with the transfer portal. There's only 2 players inside the top 100 at the safety position, Dylan Thieneman and Zachary Poyser. Everybody wanted both of those guys. So I think Caleb Downs and Xavier Watts, you bring up a great example of 2 guys that were X factors in those games who were tasked throughout the college football playoff to be the erasers, right? Whoever it was opposite of them to take that component away from the game. And I think Caleb Downs and Xavier Watts has proved that, Drew. The other 2 names I kind of wanted to get your opinion on because we had them stacked just a few years ago. Just like this, Caden Proctor, Francis Malinois, Drew, I think you already start to look, you go down the rabbit hole a little bit of 2026 NFL mock drafts like the sicko I am. Francis Malinois, Caden Proctor, you could stack those guys either way, come to the forefront as well. But those big body offensive linemen, it's been pretty cool to see those guys play themselves into the top players we thought they were going to be really from day one as freshmen.
Yeah, and you think back to their freshman campaigns. I mean, those guys took some lumps, right? And everyone, you throw the 5-star tag, the 5-star designation, people think they are ready to go, ready to play. And you have to remember with our rankings, it's a projection. And with those corner protectors, it takes some time to find your bearings. I mean, they are dudes in high school, but they don't see that type of speed rush, right? All those moves, the nuances that come with the defensive end play in college. It takes a while to kind of just get adjusted. So, Coop, I like those 2. Another one you didn't have on your list, and I want to pick your brain on this. What about like Jake Slaughter, the center from Florida? And again, we don't really think of center as this premium position, but Billy Napier, the Gators, they got a young quarterback back there. DJ Lagway, Jake Slaughter, you look at the PFF grades, one of the top centers in college football in 2024. To me, if I was running kind of Florida's roster, I'd invest a ton, not only to kind of fend off some of those other schools, but make sure he's not going to the NFL draft because you got a veteran right in front of your young star quarterback. I think that's another guy that came to mind for me.
Well, I like that one. And you kind of brought it up in pre-production talking about the center position. It's another position that you can see the value really being prioritized throughout the transfer portal, and you understand why. But for Florida and for DJ Lagway, who have spent much of their resources retaining their own roster, they really haven't been as active in the transfer portal as you would expect. You understand why the linchpin like Jake Slaughter, Drew, you were kind of hinting at the fact. Not a lot of people are talking about him, but that could be one of those guys kind of inching his way towards 7 figures because of the value of what he means to the team as well. So the last thing here, Drew, that I think is interesting, you brought it up, Ohio State, when you look at their running game, what they were able to do with 2 of the top talents in the game, right, in Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, having those 2 fresh just felt like not only a luxury, but such an advantage that deep in the playoffs when you talk about Ohio State, Notre Dame, and a lot of other teams battling injuries, especially when you have makeshift offensive line on both sides of the national championship. Having 2 backs that could win a lot of different ways, I think, puts a premium value on those guys, and part of the reason I put Jeremiah Love on the list.
Yeah, and if you look towards the NFL, right, Saquon Barkley with the Eagles, we saw Derrick Henry, what he was able to do with the Ravens. We've kind of cautioned, hey, these bell cow running backs, you don't want to invest money in them. But if you look to Sundays, right, if your offense is good enough, you got the quarterback, you got some playmakers, having a game-changing running back or two could unlock some things. And Cooper, the two names that come to mind, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen at Penn State, both those guys coming back. I think for the Nittany Lions, that's worth every penny.